Do you ever feel like you're doing the right things, but you still have times when you can't focus? Maybe you already do have a morning routine. You exercise every day, but you still get distracted every time you sit down and get to work. Well, I had the same thing. And what I realized is that sometimes it's not about the habits that you're doing. It's about the unhealthy habits that you're not doing. In my journey of discovering biohacking, I realized that I have 8 bad habits that was ruining my focus. The first bad habit is something that I overlooked for a long time, but that's watching television. I think in modern society, a lot of conversations are based upon whether or not you're caught up on the latest television show. I remember back in college when my roommate introduced me to Game of Thrones, I definitely spent majority of an entire week just binging that entire show. And now thinking back, I don't know what it is I really gained from that, except from being able to take part in a few more conversations than I would have normally. Now, I'm not really saying that you shouldn't watch television or entertainment or movies at all, because I still really do enjoy watching movies. But I think, especially now, the competitive nature of these content platforms have changed a lot, and so they're really vying for your attention. So I think one of the ways I fix this is to be a lot more intentional about the entertainment that I do watch, which leads me to the next bad habit, which is watching content at 2x speed. I don't know if I'm the only person to do this, but I used to have this extension on my computer where I can just hit a key and then I can watch YouTube videos at 2x speed or 1.5x speed. At the time, when I first installed this, I thought that it was actually making me more productive because I could finish a video at half the time. I could get the information from the video a lot faster. After a while, I realized that sometimes I'd have the conversation or I'm listening to a speech in real life, and I would have the urge to hit that button and I would just get bored faster. I realized that this was actually a pretty bad habit for focus because 1, I was lowering my attention span, and 2, I ended up watching way more content because each video became less of a commitment and the platform itself became more addicting because I'm getting more dopamine faster, which is the mechanism of addiction. But another thing related to social media that I quit was checking my phone the first thing when I wake up. So this is something I heard from a lot of different people before, but there's basically no difference between checking social media at 7 a.m. or 12 p.m. So basically I found that I might as well just wait until I've done the hardest task of the day before I go and check. And it's kind of like a reward I get after that. But I was never able to find out a system to effectively stop myself from checking my phone when I wake up. Because even if I put my phone in a different room or I do my whole morning routine before checking my phone, it would still end up with me checking my phone before I sat down and got to work. So the solution I found was to create a schedule log on all the apps until 12 p.m. And the app that I use is called Opal, which I would recommend checking out. But also related to this, this next bad habit is also related to my phone, is to just even have notifications on. I've found so many times I get pulled into these different conversations or interesting things because I have notifications on. Somebody would send me an article that's really interesting, I would go dig in and try to find out more about it.
He spent $2 million to age backwards.
Or I would suddenly have this really interesting conversation and I would spend the next 30 minutes or an hour talking to this person. And by the time I'm done, now I don't have as much focus and energy and it'll be harder to get back to what I was doing. And when I was working in a corporate company, I would feel so much anxiety whenever I heard this company chat notification or email notification, that it wasn't after I quit that I forgot how peaceful it is to not have that bother me throughout the day. So the solution I found is to basically just be in do not disturb mode for the better part of the day. On iPhone, you can just schedule when you don't want to have notifications. I pretty much just do that, and for certain people I have exceptions where they can call me. So the last 4 habits were kind of more related towards content and social media. The next 4 habits are more related to health. These are really the ones I started to change after getting introduced to biohacking and trying to upgrade my body. And so the first of these 4 is to just quit drinking alcohol. This is definitely really hard if you're in your 20s or even 30s, but after graduating from college, it definitely became harder to hang out with friends or meet new people. Even though I never really enjoyed drinking alcohol all that much, after a while it became a thing where when I was working a corporate job, every Friday I would hang out with my friends and there'd be nothing to do because we'd be meeting up at night except to go to a bar and have some drinks. At the time, I didn't really notice it, but it became kind of a negative cycle where the next day I wouldn't be 100% recovered. Depending on how much I drank, it might not be until Monday until I felt like I was 100% recovered. And since then I read articles that said how it takes 2 weeks for your brain to go back to normal after just being intoxicated for a day. Now that I think of it, probably during that time my brain was just operating at a lower hash rate and it was no wonder why I had trouble focusing. Now what I've done is I pretty much stopped drinking on any regular basis. It would really have to be some sort of super special occasion for me to drink any, and even if I did, I would probably not drink enough to feel intoxicated. But besides quitting drinking alcohol, another thing I had to stop drinking was boba. It's basically just a sugar-filled drink. This is also pretty much the same as snacking, because whenever I would have these drinks, or whenever I would snack. I didn't know why, but I would not feel motivated for a couple of hours, and it would take a long time before I felt like I was ready to get back into work again. It was only after discovering biohacking that I realized why, and it's because I was having these like crazy glucose spikes from all the sugar coming into my body, and it would take a lot of hours for my body to normalize that until I had a stable level of energy. So the best thing I did there was just to avoid it completely. Now instead, I just have healthier options. So even if we go to a boba store, I just order iced tea instead of sugar-filled drink. But besides drinking boba, besides drinking alcohol, there's also one more thing that I had to quit drinking, and that was diet drinks. Even though there's no sugar in it and they use these artificial sweeteners, I still felt like it was negatively impacting my focus because there was just something about it that would make it addicting, and I would crave these things. I just like never would feel like 100% whenever I would be drinking them. It was like really a negative cycle because there's also a lot of caffeine there. And as you know, like if you have too much caffeine, it could negatively impact your sleep, which is the last category of bad habits that I had. I used to just go to bed whenever I would feel tired, and even though this sounds like it's what you should do, that's actually not the way to have a healthy relationship with sleep. Sometimes if I went out with friends or watched a movie late at night, I wouldn't actually feel tired because I was like really energized hanging out with people or watching that movie. Because I just had that principle of like, oh, I'll just go to bed when I'm tired, I ended up sleeping at super variable times every day. It was really hard for me to have a morning routine of like, this is when I'm gonna finish this, and this is when I'm gonna get to work. Like to solve this, I actually had to go past my willpower. So for a period of time, I had this application on my computer called Cold Turkey, where it would just lock me out of my computer at 9 p.m. And after a while, once I actually got into the habit, it became second nature, and I would get tired at 9 or 10 p.m. and I would go to bed at that time. If you just even look at my sleep scores for the past few days, it's like my sleep scores have been super good. It's like 87, 88, 89, 91. So the most influential habit for me is to not even set up a wake up time every day, but to set up a sleeping time every day. So I would go to bed every day at between 9 and 10. If you've been following the channel, then you know I started out making health and fitness content, like a lot of challenges. But since then, I've shared my journey of discovering biohacking. And as I explore deeper into this biohacking rabbit hole, I've become more obsessed with this idea of health and body optimization, because ultimately it just leads to more focus, more productivity, and just happiness. But if this video is interesting to you and you want to follow more things that I'm learning, then consider subscribing. You can watch another video right here.